Have you ever wondered why Africa, rich in resources, is considered poor? It's a perplexing question, isn't it? A continent blessed with a wealth of natural resources, from gold to oil, diamonds to cocoa, yet it's deemed economically disadvantaged. This is what's known as the paradox of plenty, a term coined by economists to describe the curious situation where countries abundant in natural resources often experience slower economic growth compared to those with less. You see, this paradox is also referred to as the resource curse, a theory that highlights the inverse relationship between natural resource wealth and economic growth. It suggests that the more resources a country has, the less prosperous it becomes. Strange, right? But this is a reality seen not just in Africa, but in resource-rich nations around the world. So, how did this paradox come about? Let's delve into history to find out. It all began in the late 19th century, a period known as the Scramble for Africa. During this time, the continent became a grand chessboard for European powers. Countries like Britain, France, and Germany, among others, raced to stake their claims on this vast and resource-rich land. The arrival of these powers was anything but benign. They came with an insatiable thirst for Africa's bountiful natural resources and a burning desire to expand their empires. Ivory, rubber, diamonds, and gold flowed out of Africa and into European coffers, while the continent was left bereft and exploited. But these powers didn't just take, they also imposed. They carved up the continent into territories, disregarding the existing tribal boundaries and social structures. This arbitrary division sowed the seeds of discord and conflict among African communities, the echoes of which can still be heard today. The Europeans also established colonial rule, and under this system, African societies were upended. Traditional industries were dismantled, and local economies were reoriented to serve the colonial powers. Africans were forced to work in mines and plantations, their labor fueling the prosperity of distant lands while their own homes descended into poverty. The colonial powers, in their quest for wealth and power, also brought with them a new economic order. They introduced capitalism, a system which was alien to the communal societies of Africa. This imposed economic order favored the colonizers, leaving the native populations marginalized and impoverished. The scramble for Africa wasn't just about the physical division of a continent. It was the imposition of a foreign economic system, the extraction of wealth, and the destruction of traditional societal structures. By the time these foreign powers left, they had fundamentally altered Africa's economic trajectory, and countries began to achieve independence. A wave of self-determination swept across the continent, with nations rising from the shackles of colonial rule. This period was marked by a sense of optimism and the promise of self-governance. However, the path to true autonomy was not without its hurdles. The colonial rulers had left behind a legacy of economic systems that were ill-suited to Africa's needs. They had primarily set up extractive industries designed to funnel Africa's rich natural resources back to the colonial motherland. This left the newly independent nations with an economy that was essentially one-dimensional, heavily reliant on the export of raw materials. Moreover, the infrastructure necessary for a diversified economy was severely lacking. Roads, railways, ports, and other essential amenities were built with the sole purpose of aiding the extraction and export of resources. There was little to no focus on establishing an infrastructure network that could support local industries and commerce. Education, too, was a significant challenge. The colonial rulers had not invested adequately in building a robust education system. This meant that at the time of independence, there was a significant shortage of skilled labor and educated leaders who could steer the country towards economic prosperity. The economic systems, lack of infrastructure, and inadequate education combined to form a formidable obstacle to economic growth. To add to this, many African countries grappled with political instability in the aftermath of independence. Power struggles, coups, and conflicts became common, creating an environment of uncertainty that was not conducive to economic development. These challenges created a vicious cycle. The lack of a diversified economy made these countries vulnerable to fluctuations in global commodity prices. When prices fell, these nations found themselves in a financial crunch unable to invest in infrastructure or education, further hindering their economic progress. These challenges, coupled with political instability, further exacerbated Africa's economic situation. Fast forward to the present day, and the economic struggles continue. At the heart of the matter, we find corruption, a scourge that gnaws at the roots of potential growth. From siphoning public funds to shady deals that divert resources, corruption remains a persistent hindrance to prosperity. Parallel to this, poor governance presents another challenge. Inefficient bureaucracy, lack of transparency, and inadequate policies often lead to mismanagement of resources and stifle initiatives aimed at economic progression. Then there's the lingering shadow of colonial exploitation. Modern-day colonialism may not be as overt, but it's present in the ongoing exploitation of Africa's resources by foreign corporations. These corporations extract wealth, often with little regard for the social or environmental implications, leaving the continent drained of its riches. These issues, intertwined and pervasive, continue to impede Africa's economic growth, keeping the continent in a perpetual state of underdevelopment. And so the paradox of plenty persists. So, back to our original question, why is Africa, rich in resources, considered poor? The answer, as we've discovered, is complex and layered, a paradox of plenty. Africa, abundant in natural resources, has been subjected to the resource curse, where an excessive focus on resource wealth leads to economic instability and corruption. This was further exacerbated by the scramble for Africa, a period of aggressive colonization that saw the continent's wealth shipped off to foreign lands. Following independence, the aftermath was no less challenging. Newly formed nations grappled with political instability, economic mismanagement, and continued exploitation. In modern times, Africa continues to wrestle with these inherited issues. Struggles such as corruption, poor governance, and conflict further complicate its path to prosperity. Yet it's crucial to remember that these challenges are not insurmountable. Understanding this paradox is the first step towards changing it, because a continent rich in resources should not be economically poor.